I lost
And
Snuffy.
we're live. What do
Oh
you mean you
boy.
lost? What we're live. We're live. We're live.
Whee!
Hee-haw. Now, okay, so now you guys talk for a second because I want to see if we're oh yeah, there it goes. And now oh, here we go. And we're live. It's playing a commercial on YouTube.
Wow, that's
Uh
amazing.
it's playing a commercial on YouTube before it takes them live with us. But we're live. We're live right right now. God, you have to skip the commercial, but now there we are. We're live on YouTube right now. Wait, are you guys there? Are you
Yes,
just being quiet? Oh, you're just being
Here.
quiet. This is exciting, guys.
it
You're my
is.
guinea pig. You
So this is a first for YouTube for you?
you are my cherry breaking YouTube live mainstream
For the cherry
stream.
breakers.
You're the cherry breakers. And
The
yeah,
cherry
look, there's
breakers.
all these people over here.
Wow. It's the
And
start of
there's
a new career. It's another
it's
launch for you, Vicki.
I could make like $1.50 if this goes well.
On YouTube.
Pays better than Spotify.
Maybe. Have you seen this new thing, this musical bead thing? Have you seen this thing that T-Bear has one and Steve
Yeah, yeah.
Postel?
Yeah,
This is
there's
the way you sell music now, Terry.
yeah.
This is what you do. You put your album on here
On the card.
on a card, and then you smack it against the phone. This thing cost me $10 at Steve Postel's show. And then the whole album comes up on the phone
And
with
the credit.
liner notes, and you could put up videos and you could put up anything you want, and then you can add content
Yeah,
anytime you want. And I will get it on my phone.
that's fantastic.
Musical bead.
There are several other companies doing that as well, but I know that I met that guy at the NAMM show with T-Bear. Yeah, it's pretty hip.
It's a pretty cool thing. And since
Well,
people like us don't have CD players anymore, it's
right.
a way for us to buy your music. Because if, like you said, if we take it from Spotify, you're not getting it done. I got to introduce you guys up here in the upper. Oh, see, now it's all different on my YouTube screen than it is on my Zoom screen. But on the YouTube screen, Snuffy's up in the top left.
It's
We
backwards.
got Snuffy Wilson. We've got Snuffy Wilson, Snuffy Walden up there. We got Terry Wilson, Tony Braunagel. Okay, so who's going to tell us how old were you guys when you met, and where do you remember where you met?
They'll remember.
I
I'm
sort
in a
of
couple
I
places.
sort of remember when I met Snuffy. I remember that Dennis.
Probably.
You were in a band with Dennis, I think,
Crash Collins, yeah.
Crash
and I was
Collins.
in a band called Buttermilk Bottom.
Buttermilk Bottom, that's right, with Tony Lee.
But actually, before that, I was working at the Dome Shadows in like a 10-piece soul band, and Dennis used to come out there, and I met you around that time because one night after after my gig, back in those days they finished at midnight. We would all go party at somebody's house, and I don't know where it might have been Dennis. Dennis lived in a house with Phil Collins and three or four other guys, and that was a wild place.
Yeah.
And of course, I went there because of that, and that's where I first met you one night there. So and after that, and then I was in Buttermilk Bottom, and then
That's where I remember seeing you play was in Buttermilk Bottom.
yeah, yeah, with Tommy Bradley and Steve Hunter, and
I think we met on San Jacinto Junior College campus.
that's exactly right.
Snuffy, I think I met you at Love Street Light Circus Feel Good Machine.
Love Street.
I think either somebody was chasing you,
That sounds right.
you were just had sex, and you were being
I was just going to say male or female.
I don't hear this.
Male or female, Terry.
No.
Come on.
Come on,
No, I
Tony.
don't want to hear this
I do
story.
remember you had that Chinese Japanese black and silver
Girlfriend?
pilot jacket with the lion, the tiger on the back.
That's
All
right.
right. Wow.
It's like
Good
a
memory.
football jacket kind of thing.
You got a better memory than I do.
That's a great memory, man. Yeah. What were you wearing, Terry?
Bell
Who wore
bottoms,
it
and I
better?
had a blue jean shirt with embroidery on it. remember.
Oh, come
Wow.
on, stop that you remember that.
I mean,
That-
You
well,
made
that was
that up.
back then, Vicky. That was a uniform. You knew you had hippie girlfriends that would do embroidery on clothes for you, and you halfway wear out your jeans, and then they would take them and go, "Hi, honey, let me put something on it for you." You know. And today that's tattoos, but back then it was embroidery on your jeans.
I was the hippie girlfriend and I wasn't sewing shit on your jeans. I was sewing on my I wasn't a good girlfriend. I was going through the boys too fast, so I didn't have time to sew it on
You
your
didn't have
jeans.
time to sew for 'em?
I was moving on.
Okay, la 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 la.
Okay, so wait, so how old are you guys when you're meeting up?
19-ish.
19 or 20, right around
I was
there.
going to say 18, but
Yeah.
Okay, so now how long have you guys each individually, or and I know you've been playing,
We're
you've each
talking
been
that-
playing music for a while
That
already,
was about
right?
1969.
69, yeah.
Good. Yeah, good call. I graduated high school in 67, and I plowed through college for a couple of years and played in nightclubs and everything. And then I just went, I've had enough of school. I'm just going to play music. And that's when I remember going to my mother and saying, Mom, that summer school class I'm supposed to do before I go back in the next fall class, I'm going to take off, the summer school. And she goes, why, honey? And I went, yeah, and I wasn't telling her the truth. And then when I didn't go back in the fall, she says, I knew you were going to do that. And I went, and that's when I went off the other way and just played music. And I met Terry right around that time. And we became friends right around 69, I think. Yeah. So that's quite a while ago. Well, we've been playing.
Where'd Rabbit plug into all that?
Well-
I knew about Rabbit. I was still in high school. I think I was a junior, senior. I was driving, so you had to be 16 to drive. And I heard about him looking for work, and he was playing a country bar with Bill Nash,
Yeah.
the Bawana.
Yeah. Right.
Was that Pasadena Boulevard?
Yeah. It's in Pasadena, the Bawana Club.
And
Wow.
and
Bawana.
and I walked in, and Rabbit had an upright piano with a Farfisa on top. And he saw us walk in. He knew I was bringing a couple of the band members in, and so he got to sing a song. He sang Eddie Hinton's "Funny How Time Slips Away." And
So now when did you guys all end up in the, what was it called? What was the strip club called?
The
Cellar.
Cellar. So that's not where you guys met, and you weren't even playing there at the same time. You weren't playing there at the same time with the same bands.
Snuffy, who were you working with back then?
I had a band called the Elm Street Blues Band with Little Kenny, the bass player out of
Kenny Bobo.
yeah.
Kitty Bobo.
Kenny Bobo.
I didn't know you worked with Kenny. Was Linda
Kenny,
Waring in
Kenny.
that band ever?
Right. No, we were just a trio.
No, Linda, the drummer from
The girl drummer.
No, Linda wasn't in it.
Okay.
I played with Linda before that. I played with Linda on a BJ Thomas tour when I was 16 or something.
Wow.
Okay, so somebody just asked who were your influences back then? So each of you take that. Like I know you were Tony. The first time we chatted, you said, it was before the Beatles when you were getting pulled into
yeah, without
music.
a doubt.
So who was sucking you into the music scene when you
Well, I
first...
mean, my birth away from leaving the family sort of without them knowing it, at the age of about 12 or 13 was when my cousin was babysitting me one day with my other cousin. He was a year older than me, and she was about 5 years older. She was babysitting us, and she was playing the black stations, KYOK and KCOH. I grew up around country music. My dad played country and western guitar, and all I heard was Bob Wills and Hank Thompson and everything all the time, and which is great music. Don't get me wrong. And then I heard that music, and something, bing, changed in here.
Yeah.
And then I got in trouble when they found out I was listening to that music. When I had one Saturday I was washing the car, and you remember the buttons on when you could turn on the radio and you could change the station by pulling the buttons out. Well, I changed two of the buttons, and on the next day after church, we were riding out to Grandma's house, and my dad was a button pusher when he drove, and he's slamming the buttons and everything, and he gets to the end, and it's a Sunday, so it's loud gospel coming blaring out, and he was just, "Damn, what the hell is that?" And of course, Terry knows my dad really well, and that's not what he said, but and we could definitely say a lot
Close
more
enough.
than he
Yeah.
said, but close enough. And so that's when I was kind of discovered that I was going to go that way, at least for me. And then that was really Bobby Bland, Ray Charles, rhythm and blues, completely rhythm and blues, and then Stax Records when all of the Otis Redding and everything come out on that. That was my birth into music, and I'd played rock and roll with the kids sometimes because I would be in a band that would play on weekends and with the kids. But once I started playing in nightclubs, that's all I really did. And rock and roll came later for me when I got out of playing in that Dome Shadows. I was where I kind of around the time I met. Yeah.
That was a horn band, wasn't it? The Dome
Yeah,
Shadows?
yeah. That was my route. But then I went, I don't want to do nightclubs. And so I want to be in a band that's writing songs and make it big and have a big record contract and everything. And Terry was in the other band across. We were like in, bands that were like in the same group of folks and people and everything. But both bands were writing, their own songs and trying to move forward and everything. So it was around that time. Um,
Oh,
I'll
okay,
let-
so yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't want to tell all the story because Terry's got some things to say here. So
All right, Terry, let's hear from you. And by the way, people are asking a lot of questions like, how did you guys get from Texas to England? And we'll get to all of that. We're still in Texas now. So
I think I had a buddy. We were in class together. He was the only other musician that I knew in our class. It was Jay White, who later moved to LA and worked with Rick Nelson, and he's back in Texas now. But we both played guitars and playing junior high, 7th, 8th grade talent shows and doing alley-oop,
Yeah, I remember those.
Louie, just the dumb knucklehead shit.
Right.
Anything you could play chord-wise, because we were just learning. And
Land of a Thousand Dances.
that was too hard.
That was too hard.
Who was going to sing that? But and then we started learning like Kinks songs. You Really Got Me.
For me, it was Animals.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, House of the Rising Sun was the first hard chord progression to learn on guitar.
A minor, C.
And hitting that bar chord on the F.
Oh, wow.
now, are you all playing the instruments you ended up playing at that time? I know you all singing. Are you singing, Terry?
Me and Jay were singing. He was a better singer than I was at the time.
But you're playing bass, or you're playing bass.
I'm playing guitar.
You're playing guitar. Okay.
At 19, it was pretty close after seeing Jimi Hendrix. I went out and bought a bass.
Talking about that last night.
It was like, oh shit.
You didn't want to work that hard, huh?
Because everybody, we want to hire you for the band. Can you play like Jimi Hendrix? And I'm like, yeah, give me a few weeks. And then not long after that, I bought a bass and realized I really enjoy playing bass, and just slowly switched over. So, but I still play a lot of guitars.
That was
And
out.
Tony, I'm sorry, go ahead, Snuffy.
Oh, I was just saying that's when you were out of high school, right?
Yeah, actually.
And Snuffy, you're playing guitar from the beginning. You're
Yeah, I started when I was about 13 or something, but and I did the same thing they did. I played talent contests and played Golden Wildwood Flower and whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever I could play. It wasn't really until Clapton and Hendrix that I got serious about it. Toward my senior year, I was kind of drinking beer and going to hear soul bands, all around Houston. And then I got serious about guitar when I heard Hendrix and Clapton. So
Yeah.
whoa, this is good.
The Houston area had so many great soul bands. There were so many bands out of Louisiana, Beaumont, that you could go see 8 to 10 piece band they would have 2 or 3 different singers. They would rotate,
Right.
3, 4 horn players. And these are great players. These are really badass bands with guys like Gigi Shin and Jesse Langford and
Yep.
Buddy Wright and who's the other guy that was Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Oh, can't
Oh.
place it. But there was Edgar and Johnny too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Edgar and Johnny. I used to see Edgar and Johnny when at the teen club over on the east side when you could get in when you were 15, but there was no alcohol or anything, and I would go see them play on a Friday or Saturday night, and there's Edgar and Johnny up there tearing it up, and they were
Yeah,
like
tearing it up.
5 years older than us, you know what I mean, from Beaumont, so Terry was right there. That whole thing between Houston all the way over to New Orleans was just one stream of musicians coming from Western Louisiana, Northern Louisiana, all the way across to East Texas. Interstate 10, man. You go the Beaumont Highway, you go out there and keep going. And someone said, how do you get to New Orleans? You go, well, you drive to Beaumont and you just keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
But there were so many great musicians around that time. And I mean, for me, I bought my first drum kit when I was 15. My neighbor was Willie Ornelas, and we grew up together throwing rocks at each other as kids, chasing each other around the neighborhood, playing football together, playing basketball together, playing baseball together. He could walk into my property and start playing basketball without asking. I could do the same. I could walk in his back door without knocking. You know what I mean? We were really close. And one day he said to me, I was down there already learning how to play this rhythm and blues from him. And one day he says to me, I'm watching this drum kit and I'm just like I'm chomping at the bit to have a drum kit. And he had another drum kit and he says, I said, what are you gonna do with that? He said, well, I'm gonna buy that Rogers kit. He said, I said, really? Okay, so what are you gonna do with the other one? He says, I'm gonna sell it. You want it? And I went, oh, I don't know, man. Ooh, okay, yeah, I don't have any money. I got a motor scooter, and I don't have any money. He goes, well, come on, I'll sell it to you for $100, but you got to get it between now. It's a Friday, and next Saturday I need $100. After that, it's $150.
Really?
Friend Willie, yes, he did. So I said,
hear Ornelas doing that. That's
yeah. So I said, okay.
Fucking interest on the drum kit. Yeah.
Oh, totally. He was making money, man, on it right away. So, so he says, well, what, you want to do this? And I went, yeah. So I got to sell my motor scooter. So I literally rode my motor scooter to a lawnmower shop 2 miles away, sold it for $45, walked back and gave Willie the $45 as the down payment for my first drum kit. As we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, can't believe I've got a drum kit and I have no motor scooter and I'm totally broke. I didn't care. The phone rings and they called Willie to see if he wanted to work that night. And Willie says, no, I'm busy. He said, but do I know anybody else? And he looked up from the phone at me across the table and he said, I don't know. He looked at me, goes, puts his hand over the phone and says, hey man, you want a gig?
Oh, wow.
And I've said, in my little boy voice, I have to ask my mom and dad. I don't know about that. So he said, well, you better get down there and ask them. So I go scamper down to the house and said, Mom, and I went through it with my dad. My dad was ornery, wonderful guy, but ornery. No, son. No, you can't do it. Went to my mom, badgered her. She goes, go ask your dad. Went back and forth. Finally, my dad said, all right, but son, you cannot. I mean, he had played in nightclubs, so he knew what could possibly happen. Right. He said, you can do it, but listen, you cannot take any cigarettes off of anybody, funny cigarettes. Because he knew I would take a cigarette every once in a while. And he said, and don't talk to the women. And I said, Dad, I'm only 15. Come on. All I wanted to do was play. And so they picked me up and took me to the gig. And it was a scary situation because I'd never been on a gig. I didn't know what to do. The bass player had a glass eye. And when he found out that it was the first gig, he he was in the front seat and he turns around and goes, no shit, this scary look, but that was when I just went boom. And that was after that, I didn't care, you know what I mean? And the guys that hired me freaked out, but they hired me back the next weekend. And so
must have done something right. Is that how you paid off the drum kit?
2 weekends in, and I'm already almost paid for the drum kit, and I've got a career.
There you go.
And look at you now.
Doing the Vicki Abelson show.
I haven't come very far, have I?
Oh, thanks. No,
Okay,
I'm kidding.
okay.
All right. So how do the three of you converge how did, well, Snuffy, we didn't really get I don't know if we got the backstory on either of you and Terry. So, do a shortened version of what brings you to how you three are going to finally meet. So
Really, we got together really in England.
Yeah.
well, we're still in Texas though. Before we get to England,
but we never played together in Texas.
you didn't play together, but you met each other.
Yeah, we knew each other.
You were aware of each other.
When did you leave Texas?
I left Texas I went to Memphis with Dennis Collins in 1968, 69, something like that.
You were living there?
In Memphis with Dennis Collins and Phil Mathis.
Wow.
We had a trio that we played in Memphis, and BJ Thomas's brother, Jerry Thomas, was threatening to manage us, and we went in the studio up there, BJ's studio. And
we used to play basketball with Jerry and
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to date BJ's sister.
Really? I didn't even know he had a sister. Uh-oh. A whole nother story for another day.
So you were in Memphis, and Tony and I moved to New York in 71.
That's right.
You moved to New York, you said?
We moved to New York to do a record and got hung up there for about 2 years. And
okay, so wait a minute. So Terry, how did you tell? How did you and Tony connect musically?
We were looking for another drummer. And Tony, his band was splitting up, and he was getting ready to leave Houston, and we had work with the band that Rabbit was in, but Bundrick was going off to Stockholm to do a movie soundtrack with Johnny Nash, and we had been working with Johnny playing reggae music, and then so I just called Tony up and said, "Do you want to join the band?" Because the other drummer wasn't working out, and
so you're already like professional musicians. You're already making coin.
I got to interject something here. There were so many great musicians in Texas. You had to get out of Texas to make a dent anywhere, because there were so many great guitar players and bass players and drummers, and
but there was always a place to work. You could gig 7 nights a week if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you could do two gigs in a night at times, because there was after-hour gay bars that actually were better gigs, better paying gigs, and they were nicer people.
That's right. That's right.
We were talking to Dean Parks last night. What was the club that Dean used to drive in Snuffy to play at?
Oh, the Catacombs. He used to drive in
Sure.
Catacombs from he'd drive in from Denton with his band from North Texas.
Because Snuffy said he played at the Cellar, and Dean went, "Oh." Dean made it feel like no, he wasn't going to play at the Cellar.
The Catacombs was what, like, sort of to me, if I recall, it was kind of the ultimate of that period.
You played Buttermilk Bottom. You played there.
Yeah, I played there with Buttermilk Bottom. Terry played there with the other band he was in, and then when Buttermilk Bottom broke up, for personalities and everything, I'm like, I had already wanted to go to Los Angeles, and my friend Willie Arnellis had moved to Los Angeles, and he was starting his career out here. He said, "Come on out." So I had packed I hadn't literally packed, but I'd packed my bags in my mind, and I had enough money from playing in the studio a little bit that I was going to go to California. I had enough money for gas and food, and could live for a week or 2 weeks. And Terry says, "No, man, our drummer's not. He had a problem. He had a real problem that that was part of what we all lived through back then, and he didn't do well. And Terry said, "We're firing him. We want you to play in the band." And I said, "Yeah, I just don't want to stick around Houston, man. We got to get out of here, man. Come on." Terry said, "We'll be out of here within a year." I said, "All right, I'll give you a year." Well, 2 years later, we had a deal in New York City, a record deal, and we went to New York and we made our record, and we stayed there for a couple of years, which was really quite an experience for all of us. There's, many, many side tales to tell you about that, but we need 2 hours for this. So But that's around the time when then Terry and I got to
Wait
know.
a minute, you got to give us one, Tony. You're not going. There are many, many side tales and sliding over that one.
This is 1971, right?
Yes, come on, you're giving us a story, Tony.
Well, we spent a couple of days in maximum security jail in
Valhalla State Prison. There
Wait,
was some Texas guys that were bringing pot up, and the local state police assumed that we were part of the ring. We knew one of the guys, and we knew about the other guys. And then one night we got a phone call from one of the guys that I think was turning state evidence. His name was Joe Perry. He was out of St. Louis, this guy.
That's right.
And he called up and, hey, what's going on? And, you know, and you could tell it was a weird phone call, but he had the police on the phone with him. So he was trying to get evidence to come bust us. And that night, our house was surrounded with, 12 state police with shotguns and weapons and shit. And we were all sitting around. Of course, we had some pot, but that's all we had. And we ended up spending 2 days in Valhalla State Prison.
Wow.
But we had been rehearsing with Johnny Nash to do a show at the Emerson Theater for sickle cell anemia thing for Johnny with who's the comedian? Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor was
the MC. And so we pretty much went straight, got out of jail, got on an airplane, flew to LA to go do the show. And we were able to do what's the TV show? Don
we did Midnight Special.
Midnight Special.
Oh wow.
And we did all of it. And I remember Pryor was well, I guess what is it? How to say? Well, I guess Johnny's got the melody, and then white boys got the rhythm.
Somebody's just asking what was Johnny Nash like.
He was great.
Wonderful.
Ruth Ann is
Sweet
asking.
Man. And one of the most incredible singers on the planet. Didn't get his due.
I think that Terry and I lucked out by being friends with Johnny because his manager, who was well known, he's not with us anymore. You know, he's well known Black Mafia, New York City music biz kind of but he loved us and he called us all nicknames and everything. He's like, "Hey Tiger, how you doing? Come here," you know. But when we played with Johnny, and then when Rabbit was working, he helped. Actually, Danny Sims got Bob Marley signed because I met Bob Marley before he was assigned to anybody through Danny in backstage in New York City at the Academy or something like that.
No, wasn't that at the Traffic Free show at Carnegie Hall? And Marley was backstage with us.
Yeah.
He was about 15 years old at the time.
Yeah. And so
tell everybody who Rabbit is, because not everybody knows him as Rabbit.
Rabbit was a really good friend of Terry's from over on the east side of Houston, and
North Shore.
Was it North Shore?
North Shore, yeah.
North Shore, and he was brilliant. He was a great piano player, still is, and he was coming up around the same time, and he got rescued by Johnny before we went to New York and taken to Stockholm, Sweden. And during that period, if I recall how this went, Danny Sims became very close with Chris Blackwell, sorry, at Island Records.
Island, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how he got
the free gig?
He got Bob Marley signed to Island, and that's how that Bob Marley launched Bob Marley's career. And then he also got Rabbit signed as an artist to Island Records, and Rabbit had made, was it 1 or 2 records that he'd made already, Terry? I can't remember.
I think he just made the one, Dark Saloon.
Yeah.
Dark Saloon, right.
And then Rabbit wanted us to do his next solo record. And so they were flying us over to, am I jumping the gun here on this?
That's how you got
now wait. While you guys are doing this with Johnny Nash, what are you doing, Snuffy? Because what are you doing in the early 70s?
I was playing with a band in Memphis, and then we moved to Fort Worth, and I started playing with the band there, and that band moved to Denver, And then we took that band to England in 1973, and that's how I ended up over there.
And that's Stray
called
Dog. That's your
Aphrodite.
band, Stray
Turned
Dog,
into
right?
Stray Dog, yeah.
Wow,
Okay.
that's right. You were from Denver. I remember now that because
Yeah.
we're like you disappeared. Next thing you know, where's Snuffy? Oh, he's in Colorado.
In
Yeah.
Colorado, yeah.
Wow.
So now you end up in England because Aphrodite turns into Stray Dog, goes to England.
Well, actually, we went over there as Aphrodite, and then
Oh.
I got signed, and we rebuilt the band and made it Stray Dog. So
And what year is that?
73.
Okay, now when do you guys get to
We got there
London?
in '74 to do the recording, and in the middle of the first project we were working on, the second project was offered, and all of a sudden we had a third project, and all of a sudden we have a house on Kings Road given to us by Chris Blackwell if we would stay and help him redo his publishing catalog. And then they wanted us to record with Paul Kossoff, and then the management said, well, they need a band. Oh, by the way, they need songs. And we were still looking at it as a recording project. We weren't looking as ready to join a band with Paul Kossoff, but that's what it turned into. And
Terry, when did you start writing songs? Because that's really like a big wheelhouse for you right there.
I wrote my first song. I was still in high school. I was like 17. It was just, gosh, dog, I'm going to write a song.
And I did.
And gosh,
And
dog, you
did.
still are.
And but we would have hooked up with. We were working on the second record with Kossoff when Kossoff passed away. We reached out to Snuffy.
Snuffy, how did you get free? How did you get to play on that Free album?
I ended up playing for free because Raitt was playing in free.
Right.
And Kossoff had hurt his hand. He'd smashed his hand so he could get pills and stuff. And so he couldn't track. They were just starting to track this record, so they couldn't track with him. So Raitt called me, and I came in, and I was like, the rhythm track guy. And then Kossoff came in one day and played solos across the whole record. And that was kind of what happened with that record. But I got pulled in there because of Raitt. And I didn't stay. There was kind of talk about me staying and going on the road or something with him, but I had my own band, Stray Dog, going. So.
And what year was that?
It was 73, 74, somewhere.
That was 73, 74. And what do you guys do in 73, 74?
We're on the
working
road.
for Island.
We're on the road with Johnny Nash.
You're on the road with Johnny Nash.
Well, no, 74 is when we moved to England, and and right away we just started doing recording sessions, like Terry was saying, for Island. We were house guys. We were on the staff of Island because they paid us and gave us a place to live. So we were like, we could go into the record label and talk to anybody at the label. We had full access to all these people. Not that it mattered then. And we were in and out of the studio all the time. And then other people in London found out there was a shift in the music over in England at that point. There was all the English rock and everything, but they found out that this bass player and drummer that played together for many years, or so they thought, was from Houston, Texas. And they went, oh, two Texans? They wanted that American feel.
Uh-huh.
We got hired because of the humpty dumpty, however the hell we played back then. Our style of playing, and they liked it. And I wouldn't say we became very famous, but we got well known and everybody around town, and we started getting hired for that and hiring recording sessions, which is great because, there you are in England, you're making cash on the side and you're living somewhere for free for a while. Then we moved out and
wait, now did you guys know, Snuffy, did you know they were in England? Did you all know that each other were in England? Were you in touch then?
Yeah, but we didn't hang out at that time. I was just starting that kind of a world tour with the Emerson, Lake and Palmer and stuff.
So you were already on the road.
Well, there was Snuffy, wasn't there a connection when we started doing the Kossoff record and Raitt didn't want to do it? Didn't you pull him into the Eric Burdon band to tour?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so Raitt left us because he was kind of pissed off that we were doing Kossoff. And so he left, and we got Mike Montgomery in from New York to play keyboards. And Raitt went off to do the Bird thing with you.
Was that the first Crawler album?
That was the first Crawler record, and then Rabbit after.
Wait, but that's after Stray Dog, right?
After Stray Dog.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Rabbit came back after the Burdon tour that he did with Snuffy, and then.
Okay,
Rabbit,
so wait, we have to back up a minute here. How do you get Eric Burdon? How does that happen?
I got Eric Burdon because my girlfriend moved from Denver to
I'm
LA.
your girlfriend. I did no such thing. Wait, oh, sorry. Wait, what?
My ex girlfriend moved from Denver to LA to work for some concert promoters.
Mhm.
And I came out with her, and the promoters actually managed Eric Burdon. So I went and auditioned for, he was going to take this band out on a record called Sun Secrets, and I went and auditioned, and it was a black drummer, a black guitar player. I don't remember who was playing bass, but and Eric and then me. So we went out as a kind of a four-piece and played around a little bit. And I just kind of got married into that thing for a little bit, and I was bouncing in and out doing a solo thing, and had the band called the Walden Olson Band, and other bands, and just trying to make stuff work. But I played with Rabbit at that time. We got him in Eric Burdon's band.
And then, but eventually the Eric Burdon thing ends up being a big part of all of your stories.
Yeah.
Back in 80, 81, were you in it?
When I moved,
Tony, or?
When I moved there to Los Angeles, Louis Cabaza was a good friend of mine, and he was doing some stuff with Eric in the studio. And so we did some demos at somebody's house that actually turned out to be a record later on. Believe it or not, it got released. But that's around the time that I ran back into Snuffy out in Los Angeles, and I was in Eric Burdon's band.
So this whole time in the 70s, you three guys didn't play together?
Well, we did with Backstreet Crawler.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait. So tell us about Backstreet Crawler.
Okay, so back when Snuffy said Kossoff hurt his hand so he could get pills, he did it another time right in the middle of our record in Los Angeles. That the band was brought over to Los Angeles to record. We were still living in London, and Snuffy came and took his place and helped us finish that record. And there were some gigs that we went out on, not many, but a few while we were here. And Snuffy flew around with us, and he would come on and play so he could play the rhythm part and play the song. And Paul would sit there and go, wee doo wee
Oh boy.
But then Terry and I, I don't know what the impetus of getting out of London was, but it was kind of like we'd gone through the politics and everything. Then Rabbit got back into Backstreet Crawler. Paul passed away,
right
at the end of that little era there on an airplane and on a red eye from Los Angeles to New York.
Were you on that plane with him?
I was sitting next to him.
You were sitting next to him.
He didn't die there, but he got up and went to the bathroom and did his thing. So, yeah. That was quite a day, right, Terry? Remember getting off in New York City and having being cordoned off to the side by the police, like, stand here.
I was already in baggage claim when Johan came down, said they couldn't wake up Koss, and I'm like, well, okay, what's new? And
we were.
No, they can't revive him. He's dead,
Oh shit.
And it was like really surreal. So the first thing we did was go to Atlantic Records, and we're on the phone. I'm on the phone trying to get a hold of David Kossoff, who's on the tour himself, because he did kind of stand up Old Testament religious stories and comedy, kind of a one-man show. And we couldn't get David on the phone because I think he was right in the middle of a show or something. But then he called the record label, and he knew what was going on. And so we had to explain to David that Paul was gone. And
that was the second Street Crawler record, right?
That was after the second one. Yeah, we had just finished recording it, and we were taking it to Glenn Johns to mix it in London.
Right.
And we were signed to Atlantic, and I don't want to blow it up, but Ahmet Ertegun, as far as he was concerned, we were his next Led Zeppelin. That's kind of what he was, he was spending money. He was ready to spend money and put
Wow.
it out there. But we had a terrible, terrible crook of a manager who's still alive. So I'd like to say some bad things about him right now. Uh, a guy by the name of Johnny Glover, and he totally ripped us off and ripped everybody, Kossoff, everybody. He ripped everybody off. He took the money and kind of ran with it and didn't do what he's supposed to, and didn't take care of Paul like he was supposed to. Paul could have been looked after a little bit better, and he would have probably lived through it. It's a really, really sad story. It's really a shame. And honestly, others can relate here. There was no 12-step program support back then for somebody like that could, there wasn't a team of guys like today when a musician's really having a big problem. There's a team of guys to go and just grab them and pull them out of that lifestyle and hold on to them and give them a chance to get, sober and get well again. And it's just amazing the things that have happened since those days, but they didn't take place back then, it's really a shame. Paul deserved a better chance, but he wasn't going to get it at home, and nobody was supporting him in that respect. And it was just the opposite. All of his friends were people that enabled him to get the drugs that he wanted.
After that time, did you guys just move back to LA, or did you go back to London?
No, we did the old gray whistle test. And as far as I know, we were the first band to play live on that show where the bands weren't just syncing up.
Right.
And Pete Townshend was on that show also when he saw Bundrick, saw Rabbit, and within a couple of weeks had offered Rabbit the gig to join the Who, and we're on tour in the States, and Rabbit doesn't tell us. He just starts acting like a fucking asshole to get fired. We're playing Oklahoma City with Meatloaf. And double bill with Meatloaf. And we start the show, and I looked over, and Rabbit is trying to start a fire under the theater curtain. I'm not sure why.
Oh my!
But I remember us starting the show without him on keyboards and so at that point we all kind of cornered Rabbit about what was going on, and then he told us, and at that point we were like, well, you dumbass, why didn't you just come out and say that? We would understand. Yeah. We would understand. It's the Who. Of course you got to take it.
Bye-bye. That's when he took off, and we kind of went different ways.
So, so what'd you do after? So what did happen?
Well, we were in Houston. We were going to rehearse for the tour, and then we thought, well, we'll kind of figure out what's going on, because we were thinking, well, we knew Louis Cabaza. We were thinking about other keyboard players, but Slesser, who's from Newcastle, Whitehorn's from Gray's Inn outside of London. These guys didn't want to stay in the States and put the band back together, and we weren't sure we wanted to go back to London and pick it up from there. So
I think Terry's here watching on YouTube.
Terry Slesser?
Yes, hey, I do.
What up, Chris? So I think everybody kind of felt that we either needed to break or it was done. Yeah. We didn't know what we were going to, but we were kind of didn't feel like we need to go back to London at that point.
Well, Terry and I had already at the change after Paul, when the record company didn't re-sign us at Atlantic because we didn't get Mick Taylor or any big name English rock star guitar player, and they were approached to see if they wanted to join Backstreet Crawler, and these guys, and none of them wanted to do it, and they didn't. We ended up, replacing Kossoff with a guy by the name of Jeff Whitehorn, fantastic guitar player that had been playing with he was playing with oh God, he was playing with some famous people, brilliant guitar player, and he became our guitar player. We made 2 records around that time. Terry and I ran into our manager at Robert Stigwood's house on the pool table and got to be friends with him, and he got us out of the contract, helped us get out of the contract at Atlantic and get a new label at CBS, and now we're the big deal in CBS, and we've revamped the band, and we made 2 records, and they did okay, and we came back and toured the United States. as a 5-piece band like that several times, and it was good. It was fun, and we thought, well, is this going to make it work? And then we did for a while, and then, like Terry was saying, near the end of it, we just got discouraged with it, and when we came back to Texas at that spell to rehearse and go out again, that we're in Houston, I think we all kind of went, this might be over, and I went back. I had a person I was living with back there, and she was there, and I didn't want to end that. So I went back for a while, but then I realized that wasn't going to work. And so I moved back to the States, and Terry and I can't remember who went first or whatever, but about around the same time. So
You all came out to LA, what, around 75? Was it?
No.
76?
79, 79, I moved
Really?
out. Yeah, I moved out in October of 79. I drove myself out, stayed at Willie's house with Willie Ornelas again, and lived off of him. And I did his cartage for a while because he was doing a lot of TV shows. Then I would I would take his cartage in and get paid for that and make some money. And he would play gigs around town, and I would take his cartage to the gig, whether he didn't have to pay me because I was living at his house.
Right.
And that's how I started meeting people in the business. And I met somebody from Warner Brothers during that spell of that first year that I was here. Oh, no, I came back out and I worked with Eric Burdon then. That's when and
Wait, did you wait? Who you worked with Eric? But Snuffy, you'd already worked with Eric Burdon.
Yeah, I'd done another record, Sun Secrets record with him.
But I went in the studio with him, and Snuffy, you were on that because you and I and Louis Cabaza were on that, but there was another bass player. So
somebody's asking if you guys know Alan Price.
Yeah, I met him. Yeah. But right around that time, we started go out and doing a few California dates and everything, and I just remember being in a van with this bass player who just played 100 notes a minute. You know what I mean? I was like on Eric Burdon music. You know what I mean? I was like, it was driving me crazy, and somehow I don't know what I did or whether I actually made it happen or whatever, but it wasn't long. I said, yeah. Oh, I did say to Eric, I said, need another bass player. Your music's not getting played right with this guy, and da da da. Well, you know anybody? And Terry had moved out here then, kind of the same way I did on a shoestring. You know what I mean? And he was living here. I said, yeah, this guy from Texas I played with, Terry, and that's how Terry got in the band. And we did that for, I don't know. We ended up going to Australia and
Germany, did that film in Germany.
Yeah, we did a movie in Germany.
Okay, I saw that movie. Yeah, all you guys, right?
Berlin, yes, Berlin. Come back, baby.
Terry and I, Snuffy and I had a morning call, and we were improv acting on a stage.
Right?
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. What he wants to say, he just said, well, "Say whatever you want. It just be natural." Oh,
just be musicians.
Just be musicians. And so we were, and the movie got finished. We had a great, man. We were in Berlin. What an amazing time we had in Berlin. It was just, wow. I have so many great memories of being, in my youthful, state and being crazy and having fun there. It was really, really wonderful, But anyhow, so I don't know where I left off.
How much time did each of you do with Eric?
What's that?
How much time did each of you do with Eric? Terry, you were with Eric a long time, weren't you?
Well, yeah, but they left. Tony Snuffy left.
After Michael at the Australian tour.
Right. We had Michael, Snuffy, and Tony. Then you went with Chaka. Tony went with Rickie Lee.
Yeah.
I reformed the band around Eric with new guys at that point.
And so how long did you stay with Eric?
I don't know, another year and a half, 2 years. Then he had the reunion record with the Animals.
Right.
And that kind of broke that band up, and that's another story, another time. So that part. But Tony went out to work with Rickie Lee, and Snuffy was Chaka Khan.
I didn't see Eric for about 20 years almost. I went to work with Rickie Lee Jones and then Bette Midler, and then I got the gig with Bonnie Raitt, and I was also working with Etta James in between some of those things here in town, and then after Bonnie Raitt in '89, anyhow, I don't want to go through my whole career, but anyhow, I didn't run in Eric again until like 2001, and he calls me up one day out of the blue, and And I go, wow, Eric Burdon. Hey, man, how you doing? And we had a chat. And next thing you know, we started talking about music, and he asked me what I was doing. And I told him, I said, oh, well, I'm starting to, try to figure out how to be a producer. And I said, and he said, oh, yeah, well, I'm thinking about making, and he was working with some guys in the studio, and he shared it with me, and I gave him my 2 cents. And next thing I know, I produced the next record. And
Wow.
then later on, after I didn't go out and work with him for a while, then after I was out again with him, and he started, putting the band together, and then Terry came back in on the scene. So we've been in and out with Eric quite a bit over the years, and it's, we're still very good friends. Yeah.
And Snuffy, when was the last time you played with Eric?
The last time I played with Eric, we were in Australia.
No,
I was, well, no,
no. We did what, his 55th?
we did his
55th or
60th birthday,
at the El Rey Theater.
something
Wow,
like that,
right.
at the El Rey.
When was that?
You got to count back 20, 25 years, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's at least that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we did a gig. They had lined up all the different bands that Eric worked with. And it went back in time. It started with
Wow.
his present band and slowly worked back to the Animals.
Wow.
Well, that was fun. That was a fun night.
It was fun. So I
I've
forgot
been
about
high. I don't really remember it.
that.
I don't think you were there.
Yeah, probably not.
No, because
That's right.
we had Red Young and it was Snuffy, and the only other Texas drummer around was Tom Philman.
Oh, Philman did that.
Tom
Amazing.
Philman do that.
That's great.
The only Texas drummer.
Yeah.
So we were all Texas boys, kind of launched all around the same thing. I just remember coming in and out on records when they needed something. Now I get a phone call, hey, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Show up with my guitar.
You were living here back then. You were wearing a cowboy hat daily all day long, and you were driving a pickup truck.
Pickup truck, right?
And we called you. We were at Sunset Sound, and we called you up to come and play down there. And you came down there, and we went, "Oh boy, you're Snuffy!" Woo-hoo! and he played his ass off on that. What was that record called, Terry? Back
Second Street.
Crawler. Check
Second
it
Street.
out. It's probably during that whole period for me, it was our best work, man. And Terry wrote some brilliant songs for that record that are very touching. You got to check out. Go back to Terry's songwriting really quick. He was the first guy who was like, he would just pick up the guitar and write a song, whatever it was about. And a couple of times I got hooked in with him, and I would help him with words or whatever. We'd kind of write a little bit, but he was constantly at it, just like he is
He's
today.
an amazing songwriter.
Yeah, exactly.
That
And
guy, well,
he turned into quite a songwriter. You know what I mean? It's been great.
And and also producing, both of you produce.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of left Snuffy out of the mix. He's done a few things
yeah,
over the
yeah.
years. We haven't mentioned Snuffy's career at all.
No,
Can I just
about 1982, I went quiet.
can I just
You
say
went
something?
rogue.
Can I just say something? I remember a moment being at his house over here in Studio City Valley Village at a party, and we were all having fun and everything. And Snuffy had been out with Chaka Khan, and
Yeah.
he told me that day. He says, "Yeah, I've got another tour with Chaka Khan. I think Mike Ruff was on it with you. So we're gonna go out." I said, "Are you gonna go?" Because I knew he was making back then. That was really good money that you were making. And Snuffy says, "No, I don't think I want to go. I'm going to do something different." And I said, "What are you, crazy? You got one of the best gigs in town. You can't, He goes, "No, I want to do something different." And then next thing you know, he says, "I don't know. I'm setting up a little situation in my garage where I can record, and I got a DX7." And
Yeah, that's right.
I went, What does this mean? And that was Snuffy's transition at that point
into
into
television, right.
becoming a writer for film and TV.
Snuffy's coming out of the closet. Yeah.
That was his transition. Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't to, a sexual change,
I was producing David Palmer and writing songs with him.
That's right.
And somehow during that period of time, I started doing demos. And finally, once somebody asked me to score something, I at least knew how to get it onto tape and figured it out. And then that kind of launched that career. And then I dropped out of the live thing completely.
So
Yeah.
I was going to ask Snuffy. So tell us how you transitioned from being a guitar slinger
With
to
great fear.
being a television
With great
composer.
fear. I just went from, I got approached to do films, and I couldn't get any of them because I'd never written for film. So I didn't have any demos or anything. And then I got approached by this agent to go out and meet these people with a show called 30 something. And I talked them out of some film and went and wrote in my garage for 2 weeks. I'd go in and write for an hour, and then I'd go get in bed and pull the sheets over my head for an hour because I knew it sucked. And it worked out. And then I got on a little show called Wonder Years, and both those, that was the first year, and they were both big hits. So
Yeah. They both won the Emmy for Best Show that year.
yeah,
Drama and
they
comedy,
both
right?
won. They both won.
You won a little Emmy for The West Wing. Little
How
Emmy
many
there.
Emmys have you won, Snuffy?
Only one. I've been nominated a buku times, but
Well, that's that means
51
something.
BMI awards, though.
they don't give them to guitar players.
Wow.
I had to use an orchestra before they give me one.
Yeah.
Terry Slesser says that you drove him to the marquee in your truck with a Stetson on. That's so okay. So through the years. Okay, so Terry, when did you start working with Teresa? When did that marriage of music and life start to happen?
Well, when Tony and I moved back to Houston to sort out family and what we were doing, and we were working a lot around Houston, and then Teresa's folks had this Cajun horn player that was also their mailman that we knew, Bubba Rowan, and we were doing gigs around town with Bubba, and Bubba's wife had a corporate Christmas party they needed a band for, and he had booked this keyboard player singer named Teresa, and it was Tony, Jimmy Don Smith, Bubba Roban, and Teresa, and Teresa and I met and just became friends right away. I mean, my first marriage was just splitting up, as was hers, and so we were buddies. We were friends first, and then we'd go play racquetball, go to movies, go out to eat, and just became buddies. And it took me 2 years to talk her into moving to LA. And but we've been together. We've been living together since '82. Got married in '87. So.
Yeah.
And made beautiful music together ever since.
Two beautiful kids. Yes.
Two beautiful
and
kids.
Beautiful kids.
Talented
kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, and
the one thing you gotta go to is that we ended up in the last year playing together again in a different way, but doing a record again with Terry and Terry.
Okay, so I was gonna ask Tony. So we know what Terry was doing. We know what Snuffy was doing. You started to say what you were doing, Tony, in those years after.
Well, when we moved here, I was saying that, I got very lucky and got an opportunity from someone who worked at Warner Brothers Records and gave my name to the main guy there that was the artist representative, and Rickie Lee Jones needed a drummer. And I was like the last guy on a Saturday from 40 guys who had rehearsed, tried out all week long. I didn't think I had a chance in hell, but I sat down and woodshedded all of those Steve Gadd tracks on all those records, the hits that she had at the time. And I showed up and I kind of semi-played okay. And they asked me back on the Monday, and I went back, and David Garibaldi walks through the door while I'm on stage, and
wow.
So, he's got the gig. 4 days later, he's like, Rickie's not sure she wants him. She goes to Mike Ruff. Mike Ruff said, you need to see Tony play on a gig where he knows, the music. He'll show you his confidence or whatever, and which was a really smart thing for him to say. God bless him.
He was her keyboard player?
Well, he was auditioning at the time as well, and she had auditioned everybody all week long. And at the end of the week, she says, I don't know, Mike, I don't know about, Garibaldi. Of course, Garibaldi was and still is one of my idols, all right, as a drummer. And so she said, I don't know. And Mike said, well, come see Tony play on a stage tomorrow night. And what was that Blue Lagoon, whatever
Blue
that
Lagoon
was out
Cafe,
of?
right.
Moon.
Yeah. And I went out there and she sat on the edge of the stage and watched me play with Katie Seagal.
Wow.
And I, and at the end of the show, she says, hey, can we talk? And so then we went and had a cocktail at the next door restaurant or whatever. And then I walked her to a car and I said, say, you got good night. I thought I wasn't trying to get the gig back. I didn't care. And she goes, will you come back and audition for me again tomorrow? And I said, you know what, Rickie, I won't audition for you, but I'll come play for you. Because I just went, nah, I don't want to do that. And she says, okay. So I went back and I walked in on Garibaldi, which is really an awkward moment. And he and I've talked about it a couple of times. He's totally cool with it, but it was a bad moment for him. And I ended up with a gig. And Mike Ruff was on the gig, and we went out and toured with her. And God, the stories of that is a whole nother 2 hours. You know what I mean? So then I was on the list of guys that could go on the road with touchy artists and be professional enough to like learn the music and be responsible enough to, get through the gig. And next thing I know, I got the gig with Bette Midler, which was a wonderful gig. I mean, it was like a first class gig. You got treated like, like you were actually, musicians and paid really well. Met a that's the thing about in Los Angeles, it's about relationships and everything. And so I met this whole other big crew of people that I worked with, and it was a great time. Then I was around town working with Etta James, and Bonnie Raitt's drummer had left, the English guy, what's his face? And so somebody, it was kind of, she was asking to be in her band. I think Marty Greb said, well, you need to call Tony. And she came to see me play with Etta James at the Vine Street. And I got hired. But
And that was during the nick of time and all of that,
no, it was
wasn't it?
before she was before that, but way before
But
that.
you were with her during
Nick of
yeah.
Time. I was with her
Yeah.
during Nick of Time.
Wow.
That was the night where Terry had to come take me to the hospital and bring some cash because I got beat up outside the club.
Why is that?
Remember, Terry, they hit me over the head and I had 14 stitches. You were living in North Hollywood. I didn't know anybody else, who said, hey, you got any cash? I don't have any insurance. Come pick me up and take me to the hospital. I can get stitched up. And I had 14 stitches back here, and
What did you do?
they tried to take my life, basically.
What was that? What was that about?
Just street punks, street punks. And I lived through it, and I went and played I went had rehearsed with the next week. I went and rehearsed 2 or 3 days with Bonnie Raitt, and I did a gig with her the following Friday, with the stitches, and I did that, stayed there for like about 8 years or something like that. So, and then I got kind of tired of being on the road too, and I wanted to be off. And I was like, I originally came here to try to get into the studio scene as a session player, and I wanted to try that again. And I was getting calls. It was good, And
When did According to Jim fall into this?
99, 2000, something like that.
Which, by the way, I just saw Tracy Newman on Sunday, and
oh God, I love her. She's wonderful. She's one of the creators.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I got in the house band at the House of Blues, and we invited Jim Belushi up to sing. And next thing I know, that guy's,
You're a blues brother.
coming around, sitting up, and next thing you know, he's bringing a harmonica and wheezing through the harmonica and learning how to sing and whatnot. And Aykroyd was coming in because they were doing, because he was one of the owners of the club, and we would do grand openings and stuff like that and special shows, and we got to know Aykroyd and Belushi from Jim Belushi from John's relationship, and then we became the backing band for the Blues Brothers. We were the Sacred Hearts, not the Blues Brothers band, for the distinction, and we got to be the Blues Brothers band backing them, and we still do that. And but at one point, Jim was, he had been offered a couple of different TV shows, and he tried to get the 10-piece band on one of them. That didn't work. And then he got offered this show from Tracy and John Stark and those people. And there was a network and everything, ABC. And so he said, I want the band on scenes with me. And so we did a pilot. And at the end of the pilot, they went, "Oh, great, no, we don't want to use musicians. We want actors." And Jim said, "I got to have one musician in the band." And so Jim kept pushing. He goes, let's see, Tony. Well, they said, well, the only guy that looked in the in the pilot, the only guy we liked was the drummer because he laughed and he had a reaction. And all I did was stand up at the end of the song and go, I laughed at somebody and said something. So I guess they thought that was acting. And Jim calls me and says, they want you to read I want you to read for a part. And I went, okay. I knew I was being thrown into the deep end. And so I read for the part, didn't get it, walked away from it. 30 minutes later, Jim calls me. He callbacks don't mean shit, man. You're going to SAG on Monday and you're going to register and you're a SAG member, blah, blah. And I went, okay. And so that launched my 8-year acting career on the TV show. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We had
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get back to the trio. And over the recent years, I've seen you guys play together a whole bunch, just coming together again. And so it seems to me that it's like no time passes when you guys get up on stage together. And it's just, you have like a shorthand that you guys just have, right?
Tony laughs at me.
Huh?
Why?
You laugh at me, Tony. Every time we're playing together, he just looks over and laughs.
Well, Snuffy, we have some memories, okay?
Okay.
And every once in a while, without even saying anything, something kind of tweaks one of those memories. And I love you to death. I love you terribly, man. But sometimes I look at you, and all of a sudden the memories pop back into my head, and I start to squeeze out a laugh or a good smile and whatnot.
I remember the last picture I had taken before I got sober was at Tony's kitchen in your kitchen at the kitchen table.
Yeah, that was
I got Tony. We got to have at least one crazy story of the three of you.
Well, this isn't that crazy. I got a phone call about 11:30, and thank God. I mean, the British lady that I'd been living with, I was in love with her. She came over when we got married, and we were living in North Hollywood. And Snuffy rings up at about 11 o'clock and says, "Hey, man, I'm coming over. I got some." And I said, "Okay." And I said to Judy, I said, "Snuffy's coming over." She goes, "Darling, what do you mean he's coming over now?" So, we're rock guys, we do the rock thing, and sometimes we stay up late and we talk. So we're just gonna talk, and so we sat there at the kitchen table and we talked all night.
All night. We had that marching powder going.
We had marching powder, yeah. But thank God he had also brought something that would help us both go to sleep. So he leaves and he pops his and I pop mine, and Judy never made a big deal out of it. She just kind of laughed at it, I guess. I was very lucky, and that was probably your last hurrah, apparently.
That was my last hurrah before Australia, yeah.
Wow.
And then Australia is a whole other series that we have to,
that tour was.
Were they all with you when that last?
Yeah, it was the three.
When you totaled those cars?
Yeah.
Okay, Snuffy, you got to tell the story.
This is Michael Ruff, Snuffy, Tony, and I.
Okay, I didn't know it was these guys. I knew about Michael Ruff being there. Okay, you have to tell the story, Snuffy.
Well, we were pretty loose in those days, and I was not drinking. I was drinking, but to everybody else, I wasn't drinking. So
wait, Terry just said Snuffy and Rabbit wrecked a hotel room and had to put it back together. Okay, go ahead.
But I took the band car one night and went out and went to this club and ended up taking some pills or something and drinking, and came back in a blackout and hit and run a bunch of cars and drove through the security gates at the hotel and trashed my room. And then I woke up with the manager beating on the door. And the next morning I went down to breakfast, and that was a horrible morning. Was just trying to get some eggs down me. And I was sat next to Michael Ruff, and he talked to me for a couple of minutes. And then he said, "You know what? I love you too much to watch you kill yourself. When we get back to LA, don't ever call me again." That was Michael. And it got my attention. I didn't get sober then. I stayed to produce some record with some coke dealers and got sober after that. Had my
Yeah.
last drink in the Sydney airport.
I mean, I
And so
remember.
you guys were there for that
Oh,
last hurrah.
yes, I was at the hotel. I remember when it happened. Yes, and yes, we did tear up hotel rooms, and yes, we did throw things out the window. And then, for me, it was kind of fun to go down and pick the stuff up and bring it back up through the lobby and put it back in the room. So, that I did that one night and got by with it. But Snuffy had a night out, and I don't know how many cars he took out that night coming back into the hotel, but he took out several cars, and we were laughing. I mean, we were like, "Hey, man, he had a problem. He had fun. Whatever. No big deal. And but I was gonna say that when we got over there, we were all into the marching powder back then, and
marching powder.
And
we get to Australia and we realize we didn't know any dealers. We didn't know where you could buy it. It was very hard to find, but Snuffy found it and he found our guys. And so just about the whole time we were there, somehow we kept a supply,
I could smell it.
Thank you, man, for that.
I could smell it in those days.
Yeah.
All right. So now you guys came together recently because Terry produced and probably wrote Terry Slesser's new album, right?
I co-wrote.
Co-wrote.
Yeah, this is mostly Sless and Mark Taylor, the keyboard player on the project.
Okay.
Mark Taylor, I forget who else he's played with, but great keyboard player, great songwriter. It's basically Sless's solo record, kind of. He calls it a swan song. It's the closest thing we had to a reunion record, and when it started coming together, I knew I wanted to call Snuffy because that was the obvious choice for the sound that was fitting the songs that they were doing, and they were over the moon that Snuffy was available to do this stuff.
It was fun.
You were perfect for it, man. You were totally perfect for it. It couldn't have been any better situation.
Vicki remembers me woodshedding on those songs.
I can still hear the song and those songs in my head because they were playing a lot. And you guys have played live I know Tony and Terry still play a live lot together, but you've brought Snuffy along for the ride a bunch of times as well. And yes. Is it still like when you guys get up on stage and you look at each other, do you see each other as those kids you were when you were back in Texas, or do you see each other as like middle-aged men? Like what is it?
I don't see anybody as a middle-aged man, that's for sure. Yeah, it's the same same feeling, Let's get up and do this shit.
Yeah, I don't think that there's the nervousness anymore. I think there's still maybe the remembrance of the immaturity of what we can do.
Well put.
And so we can all look at each other and laugh, and it's okay. We made it. We survived. We can do this.
We survived, right?
Turn the give a shitter off and let's go for it.
Turn the give a shitter off.
I think that's. I mean, it's just like we're sitting here talking as friends. We're still as close as probably the first day in some ways, whether our lives are gone off in different whatever, different partners and children and different elements of life, whatnot, and different parts of our careers as well. But still, you put us in the same room like you got us sort of, in a virtual room now, and we're still the same friends we've always been. And thank God for that. We'll always be.
I love this chemistry between Snuffy and Tony and I, and certain keyboard players that just know how to glue and orchestrate the sound that we have together. And I think we got to do it on the Sless record. I think we did a good job on it on Slesser's record.
Yeah.
Terry took Terry Slesser's record, and it came over, and it was a lot of great ideas and a lot, you could see that he was thinking, and he was authenticating from his heart what he felt, and he wanted to recreate something, because we had some conversations about trying to put the band back together, but bringing a bunch of musicians together from two countries and writing and putting it all back together like that was going to be very expensive or very hard to do. And Slesser kept writing, and Terry took him, under his arm and just completely helped Slesser get through the whole thing, writing the songs and whatnot. And Slesser wrote them. Next thing you know, he's putting the tracks together at his house. He's sending them to me. I'm putting a drum track on it. I send it back to him, and he's editing and putting it together. And he basically put the record together on his own at his own home studio. And Slesser sent him the vocals, and that was the album. And it turned out great. He did a great job, fantastic job.
Terry used to tell me, wait one more week. Tony will have the drums on it next week.
Yeah.
So do you think looking forward, maybe there's another reunion in store for you guys?
Sure.
I would be for that. Yeah.
I don't know. They're kind of old.
Fuck you.
What?
Yeah, that would be
Excuse me.
fun.
What year does it say on your passport you were born?
Me?
Yeah.
1950. I'm younger than you guys.
He's the youngest.
Yeah, he's the youngest. Yeah. Not by much.
Not by much. No.
Not by much. Not by much.
And
Well, go ahead.
and at this point, this not by much doesn't matter anymore. Just being
it
here
doesn't
is all that
matter.
matters. You know what I mean? That's all that matters, that we're still alive and we're still good friends and we can still make music together. And Terry and I are still doing stuff together. And I got a little home thing I got here, and I can record drums, and we're still exchanging things like that and keeping it going. And I get out and play with Teresa when I can, when they ask me, and and whatnot. And I miss playing with Snuffy when Snuffy and Terry had the other band with Sarah and all those other guys. Occasionally I would go and sub for them, and that was really a big thrill to get to play with those
Yeah,
guys.
that was fun.
Yeah. But,
Well, I suspect that there's going to be more in the future of you guys playing together.
We're not
And
done yet.
I'm really happy that you suggested this little soiree, Tony, because it's been really fun. And it's always fun to be around the three of you, when you three knuckleheads, when you're together in person. And it's always great to hear you guys making music together, because it's always rocking. And I hope
Not
there's
too many
lots more of
women
that.
will go there with that, Vicki. I appreciate it. So,
Although many women have gone before.
well,
wow.
we're using
Yeah, but who's counting? Who's
Who's
counting?
Terry Slesser says, I'm still the baby. And he says, big thank you to you three, maestro guys, he says. Thank you all. I love you all. And thanks for doing this.
Thanks,
And
Thanks for having us.
see you
Thank you,
soon.
See you,
Heather.
Tone. See you, Ter.
See you guys.